Today we're going to talk about longitude and latitude, but first of all, let's identify absolute location because this is connected with longitude and latitude. So what is absolute location? Absolute location is a point on the Earth's surface expressed by a coordinate system such as latitude and longitude. It may also be called a mathematical location. So look for absolute location, latitude and longitude, or possibly mathematical location. So what is longitude? Longitude is the numbering system that enumerates meridians, arcs that are drawn between the North Pole and the South Pole. So these right here are your longitude lines. And when I try to help kids remember longitude, I ask them to put their arms up in the air and say longitude and have your hands facing each other up in the air and say longitude. It helps you remember that longitude is long lines straight up and down. It is also important to note that longitude lines, while they are running north and south, are actually measuring east to west, which we will explain a little more later. 0 degrees longitude runs through Greenwich, England. Greenwich, England is right here. And so that line running through Greenwich, England is the prime meridian. Well, why is that one called the prime meridian? Well, the guy who created longitude and latitude lines that were designed to help sailors navigate the seas, he was from England. He was specifically from Greenwich, England. So the line would go directly through his city. And you can see they are measuring east to west. So you're moving here 30 degrees west of the prime meridian, right here, 60 degrees west of the prime meridian. We're moving west, 90 degrees west of the prime meridian. Now over here, let's change our color to green. Over here, we are moving east of the prime meridian. We have 30 degrees east of the prime meridian. So we in the United States, here we are up here in the United States, we are west of the prime meridian, and everything east of England right here, Greenwich, England, is going to be east of the prime meridian. What is latitude? Well, you have a couple of hints here. We have the equator, which is the latitude line, and we have the Ecuadorian flag, which is a country that's near the equator. So those two hints. Latitude is the numbering system that enumerates parallels, circles drawn around the globe parallel to the equator and at right angles to the meridians. So here we go with the equator at 0 degrees. And for me, I always remember the equator runs through Brazil right here. Now, I know it runs through Ecuador over here. But for me, because Brazil's a bigger country, it's easier for me to remember Brazil as being the country that it runs through. And remember how with the meridians, they were moving east and west from the 0 point, which was running through Greenwich, England, right here. These latitude lines are, while they're moving around the globe east to west, they are measuring north to south. So we're moving north 30 degrees, and that's running through right about where we live. And then north 30 degrees, or more degrees, to 60 degrees north, which is really cold. And then down here, south 30 degrees, south 30 degrees. Now, just a reminder of something you may know already. So in, let's say, January in the United States, it is winter. January in, let's say, southern Brazil, that is going to be summer. So because the opposite side, being on the opposite side of the equator, it's going to have opposite seasons. Something to help my students remember that latitude lines are the ones that are running parallel. They are running flat, lat is flat. So I ask my students put their arms straight out and say lat is flat. Lat is flat to help you remember that latitude lines are parallel to, for example, the ground if your arms are out, or parallel north, moving north and south. If you have traveled anywhere of any distance, you may be aware of time zones. So when you go to another part of the United States or another part of the world, you are going to need to be aware of the time zones and the places you're going to. So, a time zone is a region on the earth that has uniform standard time for legal, commercial, and social purposes. There are some funny time zone things. For example, China, which is quite a large country geographically, has all one time zone because their government felt like the country would be more unified if they're all on the same time zone. And you may go visit a state. For example, one time I went to Arizona and northern Arizona and southern Utah, and the place that I was visiting, there were towns on both sides of the state line, and I would move like cross the line, and it was an hour ahead or an hour behind. So sometimes it's really hard to keep track of that, especially since there's real no huge marker. Usually it is determined by country lines or by state lines. Something will determine that time zone clock. What is the international date line? It's something that we don't think about a whole lot because we're nowhere near the international date line, but it is something that you should be aware of. The international date line is an imaginary line on the surface of the Earth that runs from the North to the South Pole and demarcates one calendar day from the next. It is different than a longitude line, though, because the international date line is not straight like a longitude line. So if you think of the end of a Mercator map, like the huge map in our classroom, that's a Mercator map. And you notice to the far east end, on the edge of, let's say, Australia, New Zealand, um, Japan, that end. Okay, that is kind of about the international date line. It's straight on that map. However, the international date line in reality is super curvy. So if you take a look at this red dotted line, that is the international date line, and it's going around all these little islands so that the islands aren't divided in the middle. Some funny things here. We have Samoa and American Samoa on either side of the international date line. So if you are on Samoa and you move east to American Samoa, you are going to be a full calendar day ahead.